Hi everyone, and thank you again so much for coming along tonight. Firstly, a huge thanks to all of you for coming along again, and again my thanks to the Fantasy Faire folks for this wonderful venue and the opportunity to talk to you tonight. But enormous thanks I want to send to my very special guest who's here to help me talk about directing for Second Life performance. Please put your pixel palms together for the legend that is Miss Saffia Widdershins. Yay! Absolutely. That's a welcome. Saffia, you and we're going to have a discussion tonight about aspects of directing for Second Life performance, as I know we both have got experience of that. So my first question is to you. You're involved in so many wonderful creative ventures in Second Life. What drew you to directing theatre in a virtual space? And what do you find most exciting about it?
I think what drew me to directing theatre, I had seen various productions of different kinds, some which, like yours, relied very heavily on the actors performing without animations and developing a very immersive approach. I actually used in the plays I directed, which were 2 Shakespeare plays, I actually used the techniques we'd been building on in filmmaking, where we'd been using controlled animations with people on riders, where it became particularly important for people to learn how to work with those to express emotion, and also to we also needed good voice work, which we got in both, and it was great fun, and I was very pleased with what came out.
Well, deservedly so.
So can I turn it to you and ask, how do you manage the rehearsals and creative process for a virtual theatre production?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I start with a schedule plan. Usually, I've had the luxury of directing work that I've actually written. So I plan the blocking as I write the scene. But then if Dorian gives me something different to what I originally envisaged, I just adapt as necessary. And I'm always conscious of where the cast are and where the audience are, and trying to ensure that none of the cast end up being blocked in by each other. We, as you know, we don't use tethers, we don't use pose balls unless absolutely necessary. And I think that gives that. I mean, that can backfire if somebody's really suffering with lag. But also, if there is lag, those things can just really beat you up. And I think our avatar bodies, they're so important in a live performance. It's not like in machinima where you can use the camera to close up to catch an expression. But when one of my actors needs to portray being sad, we need to show that with body language. And for me, I think what we do is quite a lot like puppet theatre. Can I ask you, how do you communicate direction to your actors in the virtual space, especially when you're working with people who may not be in the same time zone?
Well, once you've got them together in the same time zone, I find I always behave as if they're in the room with me, and I see it like that. And we'll be using a voice program like Skype or Discord to communicate. So we'll always be together and talking. And I've even done film editing in a shared environment, and certainly filming in a shared environment. So that's the way I work. That's the way I'm used to working with actors. And I'll explain what I want, and we'll go through it and through it until we get it absolutely bang on what I want. I've been very lucky in having some very good voice actors working with me, like Ava Jean Westland, Xander Green,
Yes.
and the guy whose name I have sadly forgotten, but who played Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream. And just as he should, he improvised bits and put in sort of jokes to get the audience laughing, which of course is what Shakespeare complains about in Hamlet. You know, let not him that plays the fool speak more than is writ down.
Well, get him. How precious was he?
Yes. My words are sacred. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Not
why
when
not?
the fool gets hold of them. But I mean, you need to go, when you have a clear vision of what you want, you've got to work with the actor sympathetically. I mean, it's no use bullying an actor virtually who's a volunteer who can, you know, they're not getting a salary for this. They will go if they're not enjoying it. But you work with the actor sympathetically, but you find a way to communicate your vision. So you'll be saying things like, well, I'll give you an example. In Much Ado, there's a character of Hero's father. When Hero is accused of basically being unfaithful to her fiancé at the altar where they are to get married, and he storms out on her, having spoken to her in the cruelest possible language, and her father then speaks words about, you know, that he wishes she was dead rather than dishonoured, and so forth. And I talked to the actor playing the father and said, look, you can storm and rage at her. That's one way of going, but I want something else. I want you to convey how much you love her. You're saying this to her because your heart is breaking, and I want to get that emotion over.
Yeah.
You know, that he truly loves her. I mean, just a bullying man is unpleasant, but a father whose heart is breaking, who thinks it would be better for his beloved daughter to be dead, that's something that will move the audience. And you have to get it across. And if they're not getting it at first, you explain it again. I mean, I don't have very strong actor skills myself. So what I have to do is find words to convey it so they can see clearly what I want to get out of something. And then when they go through it, sort of break it down and get it. We got it. It's a really good performance of the father. So, okay, turning it back to you, what role does the avatar and its movements play in your direction? How do you use the avatar's body language to convey meaning and emotion in the performance?
I think it's everything. I mean, for us, and I mentioned this earlier, you know, in machinima you can use expressions, which we've got some of, those of us with the mesh heads, and But you can't rely on that in the theatre. You can't use it at all. Getting the timing right. I mean, when you've got to remember where you're supposed to be standing and what you're supposed to be doing and what line you're supposed to be dropping, and then you've got to remember to get your hood out and change it just would never work. And also, I cannot know where my audience is coming at any given moment. So we use a lot of movement. I mean, we have a rule in the theatre. We never ever emote what can be shown. So you would never emote that you turn away from somebody. You would just turn away from them. Because if you've got text, I mean, all ours is in text. We don't do it in talk. And the reason that we have never done a performance in speech is our stage was huge. And our casts were usually huge as well. And not all of them had a similar great bandwidth. I mean, I live on a boat right at the moment, so my bandwidth is quite appalling. And you're hearing things not quite at the same speed as each other. So if we all tried to sing a song now, it would just be an unholy din. And that was a real problem. And we tried recording it and playing it over the stream, but we had the same problem, was that most of the actors could hear the line and do what they needed to do right at the right moment. But we had one or two that just weren't hearing the line at all. You know, and it technically we're still not there with voice. There are people in the audience right now, and to hear us both, they've probably had to cam quite a good deal forward to make sure that they can hear our speech. The problem is there might be somebody in the audience, this is the very first day in Second Life, and they're thinking, what is going on? You know, what can I hear? I'm not sure what I'm listening to. And I think that's very difficult. And I think I called this puppet theatre, and the reason I call it puppet theatre is because what you've got to do with your fingertips on your keyboard is elicit emotion out of a piece of text. And that is usually, for us, we do that by movement, by the way the characters are. If they're having a big row, I'll have them standing very close to each other. If somebody is trying to bully somebody else, I'll get them to try and hog the centre. Yeah, I think you're right, Thorn, and I think that will be really interesting. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, and in the meantime, I think we deal with it how we deal with it, and certainly avatar movement it's the be all and end all, I think, for us at the moment with our plays. So, Saffia, how do you work with virtual sets and environments to enhance storytelling? Do you have a specific technique for designing space that supports the narrative?
Well, it really depends on which play I've done. I mean, for filming, I've moved around and shot things in a variety of places, some of which were built especially for us, and some of which exist in Second Life. So, for example, the looking glass we used in episode 2 of Omega Hex, and that worked out. That was a beautiful location to be shooting in. For the two Shakespeares I did, Midsummer Night's Dream, we basically set in a woodland grove so that it could be filmed anywhere. It could be seen anywhere, so that people would come along and watch, and we had very casual seating for them. So they were sort of sitting in the woodland glade and sharing that. Much Ado About Nothing we did on the big stage at Fantasy Faire, and Marcus Inkpen built a beautiful set for us, which had archways that collapsed and reassembled themselves. But it was quite simple. It had kind of garden areas where people could be. People could hide behind a hedge and peer over it to hear someone's conversation. And that was very much kind of a theatrical design, I would say, because Marcus is actually a theatre designer in real life, so he used that. Can I just respond to something you were saying about avatars as puppets? Because
Yes.
I don't know if you know about the work of Edward Gordon Craig.
No.
He was a turn of the 20th century, the other end of the 20th century, designer who had a fascinating life. I mean, he was the lover of Isadora Duncan. He designed the Hamlet sets for Stanislavski's production of Hamlet. He was the illegitimate son of the actress Ellen Terry, so he grew up in the theatre, and he had very fixed ideas of what theatre should be, and he was like the first designer. I mean, Victorian drama, Victorian productions of Shakespeare had been incredibly elaborate. So you would have like a fairly short scene in a Shakespeare play, and then it would stop and you'd go to another part of a battlefield or something and someone else would respond. And the Victorians would have incredibly elaborate set dressing, so it would take like about half an hour to change one set for another. And the audience, yeah, I mean, it was just crazy stuff. And Edward Gordon Craig came along, and one of his earliest things he did was a nativity, and there were sheep meant to be on the stage. Now, the crazy Victorian idea would have been to construct realistic looking sheep, or even have real sheep on the stage. But what they did, what Edward Gordon Craig did, was he got some sacks stuffed with wool, tied the corners into vaguely ear shape and said, "That's the sheep, let's get on." So he had this theory, as well as sort of being a revolution in set design. He had this theory that all actors in real life, as well as, well, there wasn't virtual life, I mean, he never knew about virtual life, so all actors are what he called uber puppets, that they are like super puppets, they're not human. It's a bit cold, but that was his theory, and he was very interesting. His ideas about theatre and how people react with the set were fascinating. You should have a look. But when we were doing the Shakespeares, we talked about this and actually thought about how we could use his ideas in creating things. Sorry, you asked me a question and now I haven't talked about that at all.
No, I think you have. You talked about the virtual sets and the environments and to enhance the storytelling. I think that was a very full answer.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, what challenges do you face when collaborating with virtual actors and designers in Second Life? How do you overcome them?
Oh my goodness. We started in 2007, and I think over the course of the years since that time, we've done probably, I think, 15, 16 full-length plays. Some have been repeated, a huge amount of work, and we've met pretty much all the different kinds of challenges you can imagine. Mostly it's lag based, but I have had people in the cast who had little to no English language, and my language skills are dire, and so I would use Google Translate if I had anything to say that was too detailed. We have had folks crash right in the middle of a scene many times. We had one performance where we turned up and they had to kick everyone off the region and restart it. And I think we literally had just gone on and then done our opening announcements. So that was quite. But people are usually, I mean, your audience, they're here. They know Second Life. They know about lag and they completely understand. And they just sit themselves, in this sort of area where they will join in that belief of what's going on the stage, and just ignore if an actor just suddenly for randomly no reason is played by somebody else. They kind of go into that. And we had new folks to Second Life suddenly appear on our stage, because certainly we don't really ever perform on Samandirial anymore, but when we did, we were in the destination guide and the teleport would put you straight down on the set. So sometimes we'd be getting people who were a couple of hours old, if that, teleporting onto our stage while we were performing, and you would have to offer them teleports and hope to God that they had learned enough to take it, so you could get them off the set. And if the worst, you had to ban them from the island and then sort of send them a little message saying, we're really, really sorry, we're in the middle of a production. We're not banned you for anything you've done, we've just got to get you out that space. And my casties are really, really good at coping with any of those issues. And so Mystique is always in voice as a stage manager and saying, can you slow the pace down because so-and-so has crashed? We need to get them back into the world, and we need to get them dressed. And then, of course, you have all that thing when you come back in that you're going to be like, are you going to be dressed even? So that's always a bit of an issue. And the cast got very, very good at ad-libbing if necessary until someone managed an urgent relog. We have used invisible floors because sometimes we'll go to regions where we can't double-click teleport, which is something that we quite often rely on to get in and out of the space. I mean, there are all kinds of issues. It's just most of them are technical. What about yourself? How do you handle technical difficulties during the production process or live performances?
Well, I can tell you a funny story about that, which comes from actually filming The Black and Mirror, which the season 1 we did without any animations, any sort of those HUDs that allow you to control people's movements. And there was one sequence where Harlequin stormed off in a temple with the other 3 hanging behind him, Mr. Biggins, Edward Pierce, and Ash's character, whose name escapes me for the moment. And what happened was they were meant to just walk along the street, and she says something that triggers Harlequin, and he turns round and confronts her face on, like, you knew and you never told me. And
yes.
She then defends herself. Now, it was just obviously the close-ups, the facial close-ups were fine, but getting 4 people to walk at compatible speeds with each other down a street, one of them stops, the others stop, the first one turns round. It took us a whole weekend of 2 8-hour shoots to get that in the bag.
Mm.
That's how difficult it can be, and that's why when we discovered the HUDs that would allow us to put everyone on so they turned perfectly, we use them.
Yeah. We don't use them, but I know what you mean. It's tempting sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. I think with theatre, you're either having to commit to those HUDs or you're doing it freeform. And the freeform has an immediacy that the HUDs perhaps don't have. But the HUDs will actually get people to the place where you need them to be at the right time. And that is a huge plus. Okay, so what software or tools do you use to bring your vision to life, and how do they influence your creative process?
I use loads of things. I will talk more about this probably on Saturday when I'm talking about writing, but I mostly write in Scrivener. I don't use Word really.
Oh yeah.
Don't like it, but I love Scrivener. I also do love Google Docs, and certainly with film scripts, I will write a script and I will send out invitations to share that document with everybody that's involved with that, because then we can do edits, we can make notes, we can ask questions and see where everybody is in the script. I love Google Docs. I can't tell you, it's so cool. We absolutely rely on Discord. We use Discord for everything. So, Curtain Call is Discord where we're all getting into voice and we're all checking in, so the stage manager knows everybody's there, and we chatting away to each other. We always have a curtain call an hour before we go on, so that because we have had situations before where people come to the production, which is awesome, but if the region gets full, you can't get your cast in, and that's a real problem. So you will have to get their pixel butts in place an hour before the production. They can go and do whatever they want with their real butts, but at that moment, you got to have them there an hour early.
Yes.
Because otherwise they might get locked out of the region, and that will be a disaster. Dorian uses Reza technology for the sets, and he'll be talking more about that tomorrow. So we love that. That means that we can change sets at a push of a button, and that was awesome, and that has been awesome all the time. I think kind of use whatever was in front of us and whatever we've got. Obviously note cards, obviously groups. I don't get people to make new avatars for characters. What we do is we just change our titlers. So the character that you play is above your given Second Life name, and then, so we just change the roles in the group. So that's how we do it. But I've got a really hot topic now, and this is because this is very important to me. I wondered what strategies you use to create an immersive experience for an audience in Second Life.
I think the importance is the story. One of the things I loved when we put our plays on was the amount of audience reaction we got.
Yes, yeah.
And the audience were, usually when you're putting on at the theatre, if the audience start heckling you, that's seen as a bad thing. um, unless it's a pantomime.
Yes.
But in Second Life, people will say, "Oh, I hate him. He's horrible," in a serious Shakespeare play, and that was delightful to me when that happened.
Yeah.
Because the audience, the scenes, the characters, the voices, the movements, everything had drawn them into wanting to talk about it, wanting to cheer on the goodies, wanting to boo the baddies. And it was amazing, to have this audience feedback. And the actors loved it, so, they pushed more because they were enjoying it so much. And it was a kind of, the audience fed off the actors fed off the audience, and it was brilliant.
I 100% agree with that. We loved it. We loved the heckling.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges you'd say you've encountered when directing in Second Life, and how have you addressed them?
Ooh, well, you've got to be super flexible. You've got to be very approachable as well. I don't think that the dictator approach to directing would work in Second Life myself, because there is so much to do here that if you're why would people hang around and be part of your group just to be yelled at? It just wouldn't work. So you have got to make people want to work together. I think one of the things I've always, not to blow my own trumpet too much, but I think I've always been very good at getting people to work together and really see the benefit of each other. And when we're putting together a cast, I'm so mindful of personalities when I'm casting. We always say in the Jewell Theatre that we are a drama-free zone, which sounds at odds because we're a drama group, but our drama is all on the stage. If we do get an upset or anything like that, it could tip. It's such a precarious little bit of balance. I know that other directors, and like you've mentioned, the tethers and the pose balls and the hoods and things. I like my actors to have agency over their characters because I feel they bring their brains to the event, and when they do, magic happens. Because quite often I've written a story. I never forget. Now that I'm afraid this reference is probably not going to mean very much to many of you, but we have a radio soap opera in the UK called The Archers, and I had written a script once, and a lady that played Caroline in The Archers, bless her, she's died now unfortunately, she read my script at this event. And it was only at that point that I realised that when you're writing a script, you're doing 50% of the work. You think you're doing 100. You think you're creating magic, but you are not. An actor can make or break your work so quickly, and you have to respect that. And I think if you can throw that respect out to them, then you're going to get that in return in spades. And I that's really very important to me. And I think as well, and this is the other thing that I really like, I hate things like shopping. I really hate shopping. I hate sourcing. I'm no good at the technical stuff. I'm not very thank you, Dorian. I'm not, I'm not very good at promoting or the marketing, but I had people in the group that were excellent at it. And when you have given somebody a job like wardrobe or technical design or production, for the love of all that's holy, get out of their way and let them do that job. Don't keep micromanaging them, and you've got to give the people that have done wardrobe, I used to drive them mad, and they'd go, right, Fakey, what do you want this person to be wearing? We've got this and this. I don't like that, don't like that. Yeah, sorry, I don't like any of those. Well, what do you want? I could feel their frustration. I kind of I often would say, look, I'll know it when I see it, but I'm really, really sorry, none of these are quite right. And I would then have to go into Google in images and say, oh, well, see this guy out of Game of Thrones, the way he's looking here, I want something like that, but not quite so tattooed, or something. So
Yeah.
and I think that's very important. Just get out of their way and let them do their job, and I think that's really important. What about yourself? How do you build a sense of community or an ensemble spirit in a virtual theatre group?
I think whatever I've been doing, I think the team is really important. It's always been vital. Actually, having fun together can work well. So that maybe you sometimes have long, hard days of rehearsal or filming or whatever, and you really have to kind of make some downtime into that, so that we sometimes watch films collectively and discuss them, and I think that
That's a
works
good
for
idea.
theatre as well
Yeah.
as film. And I'll share clips that are important. When we were doing Much Ado About Nothing, I shared a clip that was the English actor Simon Russell Beale, who's better known probably for his theatre work than he is for films. And he's brilliant. He's an unlikely leading man. He's, even when he was young, he was kind of quite stout, but he has a beautiful voice and a wonderful power on stage that draws the focus. He's a most marvellous actor, and he was talking about playing Benedict in Much Ado About Nothing, and he says that people don't pay attention to the fact that Claudio is a really good sword fighter, is a real hotshot. And there comes a point in the play when Claudio has insulted Hero, as I mentioned earlier, where Beatrice, who is Hero's cousin, asks, he says, they finally confess their love to each other, and Benedict says to her, ask me anything and I'll do it for you. And she just looks at him and says, kill Claudio. And he instantly recalls and says, not for the wide world. And Simon Russell Beale pointed out that what she is doing basically is sending him to his death, because he's a soldier, but he's not as good as Claudio. He knows that Claudio would, if challenged, would be able to kill him easily. But then he says, that he will ignore what he said, because he will do it. He will challenge Claudio to a duel to the death. And what he's doing is saying, I'm going to challenge him to a duel to the death, but I won't win. I'm not as good as him. And that's a moment that kind of holds the audience. And I showed this clip, and we talked about it and how to convey that. Because Simon Russell Beale laid it out as something that is happening, but he didn't explain how he as an actor responded to it. And so talking about and thinking about how he as an actor responded, I think, was very valuable.
What projects have you got lined up for the future?
Not any theatre work. I am hoping to get Designing Worlds up and running again, using a sort of different style. Of actually getting people to make little segments for the show and then patching them together. So it would be more like BBC's country style, country file. Where you cut from someone talking about sheep farming in this part of the country to someone doing something else in another part of the country. So I really, that ought to be my priority, and I really want to get a team together to do it. What you said about team is so true. I mean, people see me, but there are dozens of people involved in most of my projects, like Litfest here. We've got so many people working on it, especially now it's got two components, you and Dorian looking after Theatre Fest and Chantel looking after Film Fest. And it's just wonderful working with all of you. I just love it so much. Thank you. One of my favourite sayings is, "You make all boats rise together."
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I wonder, did you want to link your clip and we can have a...
I can't find it.
Oh no! Oh, never mind.
I've been looking for it and I can't find it.
If you find it, we can always send it out and let everybody know where they can go and look.
Yeah.
I mean, I think film of plays is quite difficult because it's what you're focusing on, and there's so much of an experience of liveness,
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Saffia.